Good morning and welcome to our special council meeting on March 4th, 2025. The purpose of this meeting is to consider the options to fill vacant council position. I now call on Will Short, Regional Clerk, to conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Chair. Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Craig. Present. Councillor Erb. Present. Councillor Foxton. Present. Councillor Harris.
Present.
Councillor Hunick.
Present.
Councillor James.
Present.
Councillor Liggett. Councillor McCabe. Present. Councillor Nowak. Councillor Salonen.
Present.
Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Vanovic. Present. Councillor Williams. And Councillor Wolf.
Present.
Thank you, Chair.
I'd like to acknowledge that the land on which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Chinootan peoples. In doing so, I want to reflect on what it means to be doing important community work like we're engaging in collectively today, and also in my own relationship to the land. As a settler, one of the most important aspects of my individual journey towards truth and reconciliation has been to listen. I'm constantly grateful to a community that shares their stories and their concerns with me. As well as the chair of the region, I know I carry a large responsibility to ensure that it is not just myself on an individual level listening and acting, but that as a government, we are listening and creating action in the community. I offer this acknowledgement as one of the many actions I am personally and the region largely is taking in our journey towards reconciliation. We recognize the enduring presence of the Indigenous peoples with whom we share this land today, their achievements and their contributions to our community. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? Seeing none, are there any delegations? Seeing none, I would now call on Will Short to introduce a report.
Thank you, Chair. To Council, good morning. You will remember on our last committee day in February, we briefly discussed the vacancy report when we actually let everybody know about Councillor Deutschmann's resignation. At the time, Council requested to defer the report until following the provincial election, which happened on February 27th. So it's the same report that we were working on at the time. It outlines the options for either filling the vacancy through an appointment by Council or through a by-election. Both options are highlighted in the report itself. If you have any questions for us specifically about the application process, Tim Brubaker, our Deputy Clerk, has been working on all of the research and information for that, so he'll be happy to answer those questions. And at this point, we'll just open up the floor for debate or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Vanovic.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you to staff for bringing this comprehensive report forward. I guess just a couple questions, because I think it's worthwhile reiterating them here, even though I recognize they're in the report. But the last time we were faced with this, I recall, was with Councillor Clark when the late Wayne Wetlaufer passed away. Can you remind us what we did at that time? Did we go to the next person in the list, or how did we do that?
Through the chair, in I believe it was 2015 when Councillor Wetlaufer passed away, Elizabeth Clark was selected at the time, and she was the 5th place candidate in the previous election. Okay,
thank you for that. And in terms of in the report, you reference Mr. Rodriguez, who I'll note is in the audience today. I'm just wondering, have you had an opportunity to confer with him and confirm whether or not he would be available?
Through the chair, yes, we have spoken with Mr. Rodriguez on a couple of occasions, and he has indicated that he is still eligible and would be willing to serve should council appoint him.
Okay.
If that's the will of council, we would confirm with Mr. Rodriguez that he still has a qualifying address, but that would be what we would need to do on our end.
Okay, thank you for that. So, Madam Chair, at the appropriate time, I would like to move a motion and speak to it at that time, please.
Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I feel that it's too close to the next election to go into an election. I don't want to spend the money. I don't think it's a wise thing, and I think the next in line was very close to the previous person that won it. And so I'm leaning towards going that route, especially since the individual was already involved in the community extensively before the election. And that was one of the reasons I believe he wanted to run.
Again, I know that it's in the report, but Tim, do you want to tell us what the differential was between Mr. Deutschman's results and the next on the line?
Thank you, Chair. So Councillor Deutschman received 10,102 votes, and Mr. Rodriguez received 9,714 votes, and that's it's fewer than 400.
Thank you. Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair. I would agree very strongly that the voice of the people spoke when they chose Mr. Rodriguez as fifth, and it would be in Council's best interest to bring him on as quickly as possible. Also to proceed with the necessary engagements of Council as soon as we can.
Thank you. Councillor Salonen.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I think I share a lot of the similar sentiment that's been discussed. Looking at Mr. Rodriguez and the position, I think certainly from a democratic process, he's someone who's already gone out to the public, shown his interest in this role. And again, it was actually quite close. So I think from a cost savings perspective, from getting the right people in the position, I think that's the route I would like to see go, and I'd be happy to second. I'm assuming that's what Councillor Verbanovic was going to bring forward.
Okay, I probably should have asked Councillor Verbanovic to put his motion forward. There is no motion on the floor at this point, so I am going to go to the speakers list, and we are not considering any motion. I think it's pretty clear what the sentiment is around the horseshoe, but there's no motion on the floor. Councillor Erb.
I indicated that at the appropriate time, I'd like to move a motion. So is this the appropriate time, or?
I have a speakers list, so I will go back. I'll come back to you.
Okay,
Councillor Erb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too support making an appointment. I think Councillor Deutschman had the 10,000 and the 9,000 for Mr. Rodriguez, but Councillor Deutschman had 10% of the vote, and Mr. Rodriguez had 9% of the vote. So it was obvious that the citizens of Kitchener put their faith almost equally into Mr. Rodriguez as they did to other councillor members. And we're more than halfway through the term. I don't see the necessity of a costly by-election when we know that the candidate that we're considering appointing had that kind of support from the citizens of Kitchener. So I would, assuming that that Councillor Verbanovic is going to make the motion to appoint Mr. Rodriguez, I would support that as well.
Thank you. Councillor James.
Thank you, through you, Chair. I strongly support moving to the fifth individual, Mr. Rodriguez. I will speak to something that Councillor Hunick said as well. The community did put their votes in Mr. Rodriguez, and he came in fifth. And based on precedent from before, I think there's a ample reason to appoint the next person. We'll also just ask for clarification. What would be the cost of a by-election or going through the other process, just so that's clear?
I think we'll go to Will.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor James. It would be approximately $800,000 to run a by-election in Kitchener.
Okay, and that from a cost savings perspective, I think it wouldn't make sense. So happy to support if there is a pending motion that will come forward on appointing the next person in line.
Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Chair. So far, I agree with all my colleagues. I think to spend $800,000 on an election at this point would not be appropriate, and also that would leave us with an empty seat until June. So I've only heard good things about the delegate, and I think as other colleagues have said, he did receive many votes from his constituents in Kitchener, and we do have to trust the electorate. And I, again, think the appointing of the next in line from the ballot would be our best choice.
Councillor McCabe.
Thank you. I'll play a little bit of devil's advocate because I'm curious about. I'm actually more interested in doing some interviews, quite frankly, because I think 2.5 years have passed, and there's a lot of issues that we've discussed, and a lot of things that have changed in our community in 2.5 years, and that are going to continue to change. And I personally would prefer to just open it up and look for, not to run a by-election, but to. My interest was really in soliciting interested applicants from across the community to and then actually go through the time and see who would actually who actually rises to the top, because 2.5 years, nearly 3 years have passed. That actually would be my preference, and I know some other. Like the Catholic School Board has done a process like that, and it brought in some more racialized candidates as well through that process. So that was one of my interests in opening it up to an interview process. So yeah, that's how I feel about it. But I also just and I'm not sure who could answer this, but I am concerned that he's currently employed by a municipality. So I think that's something that we need to consider as well in this process.
Okay, Tim's going to respond to that question.
So, thank you, Chair. So the Municipal Act does not allow an employee of the municipality to serve on the council. So Mr. Rodriguez would not be allowed to be an employee of a councillor at the City of Kitchener, but we're a different municipality, so that's not covered. However, in our conversations with Mr. Rodriguez, he didn't indicate that he would be intending to take a leave of absence from his position at the city. And we also informed him that should this be the option that council chooses, that we would put him in touch with the Integrity Commissioner to make sure that he was fully briefed on the implications as far as the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act goes to avoid any issues there.
Mm-hmm. Councillor McCabe?
No, that's fine. I just think it's something that we should keep in our minds as we go through this process.
I want to thank you for asking that question, though, because I think it's really important information for anybody who's watching this to know the commitment of the person we're talking about, and also clarity on the path forward. I don't see any other speakers, so I will go back to Councillor Bravanovich. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken that would like to? Okay. Councillor Bravanovich.
Thank you very much, Chair Redmond, and I will be moving Matt Rodriguez to fill the vacancy as a result of the vacancy created by former Councillor Deutschmann, and as is, I guess, already been offered, Councillor Solomon will second it, and if I can just speak to it briefly. As has been pointed out, we are a little more than 2 years past the last election. But when we're faced with these openings, obviously there are a number of options that are available to councils, but I think there are a couple principles that always need to be considered as we look at that. One is, what were the results in the last election? And as has been pointed out in this particular instance, there was really only a gap of 388 votes between the fourth and the fifth place person, which was very different than, for example, the sixth place, where there was actually a gap of almost 3,000 votes, which in that case, quite frankly, I think the circumstances and the discussion might be different because it's not clear that there was a very obvious next person in the list. So that's one reason why I think it makes sense to go this route. Secondly, obviously going the second or probably the most democratic route, which would have been going to a by-election at a cost of $800,000. at this point in time, when there's an obvious, person that was fifth in the list, in my view, would not be a prudent use of taxpayers' dollars, particularly at this time when we know, that we're facing fiscal challenges as a region. Thirdly, I will say that, going the route of appointment is an option available to us, appointment by virtue of application. But it is one that, I think brings me some concern, quite frankly, because it doesn't necessarily allow for the voice of the people of Kitchener to be heard. Number one, we could see, anybody applying from within the region, which people are allowed to do that. But secondly, it doesn't allow for Kitchener voters to have their say, except for the four of us around the horseshoe that are actually Kitchener voters. Actually, there's five, I guess, because Councillor Hunick is a Kitchener resident representing Waterloo. And so I think, in the principles of democracy, in the principle of acknowledging the votes that took place recently, and I will argue that, as is pointed out, Mr. Rodriguez has indicated, in my view, his commitment to serving on council with his willingness to take the leave, as Mr. Brubaker indicated, despite the Municipal Act not requiring that. But he does have extensive municipal experience, which I think will help him as he comes around the horseshoe to work with us for the balance of this term.
Councillor Salonen, did you want to make any comments as the seconder of this motion?
Thank you. I think I already made my comments.
So, Matt, this is how smooth it runs every time we have a council meeting. So it's been moved and seconded. The regional municipality of Waterloo selects A1, option 1A, and the associated process is outlined in the report dated March 4th, 2025, as a method for filling the vacant regional councillor Kitchener seat. So I would ask everybody to please use your e-scribe to vote. That is carried, colleagues. I would then turn to Tim Brubaker to talk about the way forward.
Thank you, Chair Redmond. So when the report was written, the timeline that we have included in Appendix A notes that a bylaw will come to confirm Mr. Rodriguez's appointment at the 19th council meeting. Given that there is a special council meeting called for the 13th, we would suggest that this just be added to the purpose for that meeting, and the bylaw can be passed at that point.
Sounds like a great solution and a little bit of clarity on the way forward. And Matt, I guess my reflection would be that none of these seats have seatbelts in them, but you're joining regional council at a very crucial, interesting time in the history of the region. So we look forward to having you around the horseshoe with all of us. Colleagues, I will now entertain a motion to go into closed. If I could have a mover, moved by Councillor Wolf, seconded by Councillor Foxton. It's to consider issues in a court. So it's receiving advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, receiving advice subject to solicitor-client privilege, receiving advice related to proposed disposition of land, the impact of terrorists, identifiable individuals, and a proposed acquisition of land in the city of Cambridge. Harris, McCabe, and Salonen, if you could vote. Colleagues, that is carried. We will now adjourn to the Waterloo room. Colleagues, this is your 2-minute warning. Colleagues, I would entertain a motion to reconvene in open session, moved by Councillor Salinan, seconded by Councillor Foxton. Please use your e-scribe to vote.
It's not coming up for me, but I'm in favor.
Thank you, Councillor Hunick.
Which meeting is this in regards to? Am I in the wrong one for e-scribe?
We're in special council. We're resuming an open session, and then we'll do the bylaws, and then we
Perfect,
will
thank you.
adjourn. Councillor Nowak, are you in favor of reconvening? Colleagues, that is carried. I will now ask for a motion to enact bylaws for second and third readings. Moved by Councillor McCabe, seconded by Councillor Shantz. Please use your e-scribe to vote. Colleagues, that is carried. I'll now entertain a motion to adjourn this special council meeting. If I have a mover, moved by Councillor Wolf, seconded by Councillor Nowak, please use your e-scribe to vote. That this special council meeting of March 4th be adjourned. Councillor Hunick, are you in favor of adjourning? We got it. Thank you, colleagues. That is carried. We will now suspend just for 5 minutes so I can vacate the chair for Councillor Erb.